You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast and almost happy Valentine's Day. Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm Jay with Kellen and TJ, and we are also joined today by our pal, Mr. Ian Shannon. Ian, welcome to the Sanctum.
Hello.
Ian also sounds like a very Irish name.
That's what my parents claim. Yeah, my dad was actually born on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Well, maybe we'll get a little jig out of you later. Maybe this is one of your movie picks. With this being St. Patrick's Day, you can probably figure out what movie we're going to be talking about this week. Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. No. I jest. Of course, we'll be talking about Jennifer Aniston's first starring role, 1993's Leprechaun, directed by Mark Jones.
And Leprechaun is one of the few movies that we've seen considered a classic that I have seen before. I didn't have to watch for the first time for this episode because I actually watched it a while ago, probably 20 years since I've seen it. So it was nice to revisit. Leprechaun, 1993 horror comedy, like Jay said, starring Jennifer Anniston, her first feature film role, coming in at an hour and 32 minutes, according to the old Google box, with a 35% on Rotten Tomato, which is egregious. This movie is so fun. Aside from one thing, one of the characters, and we'll get to it in a second, but the movie takes place with the most stereotypical sounding Irish guy revealing to his wife that he has found Leprechaun and stolen his gold. And of course, the Leprechaun's followed him back and we think killed him, obviously kills the wife, but gets locked in a box with a little clover on top. And then who releases him but Ozzy. I say that because played by the actor who played Francis in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and a version of Franklin from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, except Franklin Light. He's so annoying in this movie, but not as bad as Franklin. It's not as egregious. I think that's just the character. It's also very un-PC that his character exists because obviously he's developmentally delayed to some point, and they make a point of pointing that out multiple times through the movie. Even the kids saying, "Hey, we found the gold. We can get you brain surgery so you'll actually be smart." Everybody makes fun of you behind your back. That's peak non-PC culture right there. I don't care what you say. Them thinking that they can do brain surgery to make somebody that has developmental disabilities a little bit smarter. And he plays that character fairly straight. I just don't think it was a good choice. So aside from him in this movie, everything else is great. I was watching it again today and going through and just kind of making some notes. And I realized that there was a lot of movies that had this same feel, kind of like in the country. This takes place in North Dakota, but it's kind of like in the country away from everybody. There's kind of your typical, it's almost like a pre-Hallmark kind of feel as far as the music, the pacing, the hunky guy in the small town that she meets. But there's other movies that kind of fit in the same kind of vein as far as they're out in the middle of nowhere. They've got some hokey music, but then violence happens. Motel Hell, Pumpkinhead, Trolls 2, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, all kind of have this little bit, almost like a horror comedy Western feel at points, which fits so well for this because it is a horror comedy. This is not your typical like slasher film. It's not your typical violent fare. There's not a whole lot of killing in this movie. I think it's the 40-minute mark before the first true kill happens. And I don't consider the older couple in the beginning because the lady kind of falls down the stairs and that's how she died. So he doesn't really like kill her. And the other guy has a stroke trying to burn the house down. And we find out later he's still alive until he's not. But there's not a lot of kills in this movie. It's more stalking, I guess would be a better way to say it. But that leaves a lot of room for the comedy. And the comedy all comes as kind of like a your typical straight man, funny man, like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, where the Leprechaun plays Jerry Lewis and everybody else is the straight man. They're playing it straight, and he's just cracking one-liners and having fun with the whole time that he's stalking and trying to kill these people. Jennifer Aniston plays one of my favorite protagonists in a horror movie because she doesn't make the horror trope mistakes that everyone else makes. She figures out pretty quick, oh, we need to give him his gold back, so let's give him his gold back. Like, she doesn't try to fight it. She's not, which they set it up to be that way, right? Because early in the movie, it's set up that she doesn't want to be here. She wants to be back in LA where there's shopping and nice things, and she doesn't have to worry about getting dirty and this old house. So they set it up that she would be materialistic, but she doesn't know. She's like, nope, this leprechaun wants to kill us over this gold, so we're going to give him his gold back and be done with it, which I really enjoyed. Usually you're frustrated in some horror movies because you watch people go through and make mistake after mistake, and you're like, oh my God, just quit screwing up and you will be fine. She's making the right decisions through the movie. The other people are kind of making mistakes or playing a little dumb, but I really enjoyed the fact that they didn't have her be ditzy blonde from California who's only obsessed with money, because a bag of gold can buy a lot of shoes, can buy a lot of dresses at the mall, can buy a lot of things like hotel rooms, so she doesn't have to stay in that North Dakota shack. But she's not materialistic when it comes time to trying to protect everyone and save everybody's life. I love the Looney Tunes kind of feel of some of the stuff, like when he's in the wheelchair and he's zooming after her. That feels like something straight from Looney Tune cartoon, him busting through the fence and leaving an outline of his body. It plays at times just like something from a cartoon, except you have Warwick Davis being amazing as he usually is in everything that you've seen him in. Willow, especially, that one always comes to mind. Also, one of the hardest Nintendo games I've ever played was Willow. That hard thing, I got to the final boss and could not beat it. Couldn't even figure out how to even remotely get past it. And that took me like hours and hours of playing to get there. But I digress. This is just a fun, nostalgic movie for me. And I don't use that often because I don't have a lot of nostalgia for horror movies in the way that everyone else does, because I wasn't watching like the same horror films that people did. Like, just because of this podcast, I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time. My movies that I look at horror wise are Graveyard Shift and The First Child's Play, Puppet Master, those movies, and then Leprechaun. And I remember watching it as a kid. I have more nostalgia probably for Leprechaun 2 because that was the first one I saw. It's also the first time I saw boobs on screen. Sorry, Mom. And it was I think it's 2 because it's the lawnmower, and he does the thing where the guy thinks that the lawnmower is a hot woman that's topless, and he kind of traumatizing for a kid that's just starting to find himself. But that's also what's fun in these movies. The last thing I'll say, and I'll pass it on to our guest Ian, is this is one of the easiest to avoid horror franchise antagonists. Just give him his gold back. Like Freddy, if he wants to kill you, you're going to fall asleep at some time. Jason, if you're at that summer camp, he's coming after you. Michael Myers, if you happen to know Laurie Strode, you're probably going to get killed. This one, he literally just tells you, give me back my gold. You give him his gold, and he's happy and fine.
And he wants every bit of it.
All 100
don't swallow
pieces.
A piece of
it. Which Franklin, I mean, Ozzy did, like an idiot. I'm so sorry. He's not an idiot. He's him. He's Ozzy. Franklin light. But I really enjoyed this movie. It's fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It doesn't try to be anything that it's not. And I really appreciate that about that movie. So that being said, Ian,
I gotta say, I owe you an apology, Kellen, because I expected you to shit all over this movie like you do everything else. But you know, I wanted to talk about this movie in a way that I didn't think you guys might. And so I'll start it off by saying one word that I'm going to use to describe this movie: important. And I'll get around to that. But Warwick Davis is a national treasure. I love him. I love everything he's in, except for there was a movie a friend of mine introduced me to called Skin Deep that just felt abrasive to watch.
I just watched that last week for the first time. Awful. He throws plates. Like, it's just such a weird character. Ugh.
Yeah, it was strange, but nonetheless, you're gonna have someone like that in your career. But he's great, and he brings so much life to this character that like I don't know that it would work with anybody else. Similar to Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, that sort of thing. It may be able to be done, but it's just done so well this way. But uh, what this movie stands out to me with is uh, when I was a kid, is when I saw this, or before I even saw the movie, more so. I remember on Saturday Night Live, Wayne's World, talking about this movie coming out, and they would just show like a picture. It wasn't even a clip from the movie, it was just like a picture. And Wayne would go to Garth and like make this face, I'm the leprechaun. And it scared the piss out of me when I was a kid. I didn't know what I was looking at and or what it was. I just knew that I was afraid. And uh I felt so bad for Garth. Why are you scaring him? Leave him alone. Uh so uh eventually I did see it, but there was several movies like that there was some sort of element that it was accessible to kids in a way. It wasn't intended for kids. It was intended to be probably a horror comedy for adults who knew better. But uh, as a kid, it was relatively accessible, more so than, say, a Friday the 13th might be. And so I didn't see those until I was, past third, fourth grade or so. But before that was when I was seeing things like, like you mentioned earlier, Killer Clowns from Outer Space or Leprechaun or Troll 2. And those movies have such a dear place in my heart because when you look at them and they may be so bad they're so bad they're good, or they may be a horror comedy or something like that. But as a kid, it's an entry point that can scare you in a safe way and introduce you to what is so addictive for horror fans and facing your fears with these movies. And so that's what I love about horror movies, and that's why I love this movie is because it was such a great way for me to explore my own fear as a kid. uh, looking at it through the eyes of an adult, sure, there's goofs, there's mistakes, there's plot holes, there's all those things you'd be looking for if you were to watch it now. And rewatching it recently for this show, there was definitely some of that I was like, oh, I never really thought about that because I never took the time to look at it through that lens. But looking at it from how it was when I was a kid, it was just something special about that. And seeing the kid that's I think he's in a handful of movies, but reminds me of the kid from Dunstan Checks In, that there was just like a sort of stereotypical kid that he had attitude, he was cool, and you would identify with that character. And even Ozzy, there was just something that was like you sympathize with him when I was a kid. As an adult, you probably think, oh, this is like you were saying, it can come off as annoying or a character that gets kind of drug along through it, feels like extra weight. But uh, I really hold this movie near and dear to my heart for those reasons, and that's why I'm glad we got to talk about it. The rest of the franchise does well. I love to see how Warwick Davis explores the character and refines it, and how he does the nursery rhyme songs and all that stuff. Uh, but like as a kid, the ridiculous factors, the pogo sticks and the go-karts and all that didn't feel as obviously silly as it is. It just felt like, oh, this is just another thing like that. But when you are suspending disbelief, I should say, and just looking at it as through the eyes of a kid, it has something else that's a great entry point and a great uh, appetizer for what uh, the whole horror genre has to offer. So that's what I wanted to provide to it.
And I couldn't say it better myself, Ian. I think this is what a lot of us in the horror community call a gateway horror, right? It's one that's accessible enough for younger kids to watch, whether they should be or shouldn't be watching. That's for parents and politicians to decide. That's not for us to judge. Most all of us were exposed very early on, and I think we're better for it, right? Gives you character. But by the time 1993 rolled around, I was already well into my love of at least classic horror and the things I was able to see at pretty much every Stephen King adaptation that I could get my hands on, gradually inching my way to uh, slashers. And once we got cable, it was like all bets are off. But this hitting the kind of sweet spot. I think I probably watched this in like the fourth grade and loved it. Loved all the sequels. Uh, those first three movies before he goes to like the hood and space and the really wild ones. Those first three movies, they all kind of blend together for me, except the lack of a Jennifer Aniston, which I think she is one of the best things in this movie. Even though she spent most of her career since this movie trying to deny that it exists, despite the fact that the producers would keep plastering her face and her name in big letters to try and keep selling the movie after the fact, especially in the video store rental days. In fact, this movie got discovered, like rediscovered. I mean, it had kind of a soft discovering in the video store days because back in those days, even a little mom and pop shop might have 3, 4, or 5 copies of this thing because it sells well, right? It's something that looks innocuous enough that you don't necessarily have to be 18 to watch it. In fact, one of the things that we kept coming to is it's very cartoon like, it's very gateway, it's kid accessible, and that's for probably a few reasons. I think primarily Mark Jones, who's the writer director, uh, first come up in the business writing for Saturday morning cartoon shows and wrote a crap ton. He's written for a number of things that we would have seen, multiple episodes, probably even helped on the creation of a lot of classic cartoons from the 80s and early 90s. And so he gets that kid, cartoonish sensibility. And that's, I think, definitely infused in the whole Leprechaun presentation for sure, and carries over in all the sequels. I mean, all those sequels, even though I don't think Mark Jones had much to do with it other than creating the original one, that DNA carries over into really all of them until maybe some of the latter ones. And that's a testament to just him knowing his audience. And originally, another thing that I think that the first movie uh, differentiates it and makes it a little bit more of a gateway horror is initially they were making a PG-13 movie for that purpose. They wanted it accessible to kids. They wanted to make a franchise. Uh, Back in the day when all horror was just rated R, there wasn't a whole lot of PG-13 horror unless it was a made-for-TV adaptation like a Stephen King thing, and then it comes to video after. It's you made horror films or you made films that were for kids. That the two didn't often, meet. But the distributors actually demanded an R-rated thing to sell, so they had to go back and do reshoots and add in a lot of those scenes of the gore, like the pogo stick murder, which is probably the highlight murder I think in this one that people remembers the most, and just a few little things like that. I think they, add a few F words in there just for the sake of making sure they can secure that R rating, because I think even up to this point today, you can only get one F bomb and still be PG-13. You get two and you're automatically R, because the MPAA back then was run by a bunch of, Nazis that don't understand what makes movies good. So, um, thoughts on the cast? You mentioned, Ian, about the little kid. He looks so familiar. And I think the two touch points I remember him from the most are "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead" and Mr. Nanny with Hulk Hogan. Who can forget that?
And the best friend in Rookie of the Year.
Yes, he is the friend in Rookie of the Year. He's not
yeah.
he's not the main kid, but he plays friends in a lot of other kind of decent movies from the 90s. But it's kind of funny to me, Mr. Nanny come out the same year as Leprechaun, so that kid had like a pretty wild early 90s. Ozzy, the mentally challenged character that he apparently plays in a number of movies. Horror fans will probably know him for his best role. 10 years after this, in 2003, he played John Wayne Gacy in that direct-to-video series where they were making them. It was just called Gacy, I believe, where they're making them on all the famous serial killers. It was big in the early DVD rental days of
You
the early
pronounced Pee Wee's
2000s.
Big Adventure horribly wrong, which was
Well, yes.
obviously his best movie.
Well, he is in that, yes, but his best acted role, I think, is playing John Wayne Gacy, where he's actually acting and not just being silly, I guess. But I mean, that's up for debate. Pee Wee's definitely a better movie. But yeah, I love silly horror films. I think this film, it's kind of interesting to me. The director hasn't directed a whole lot. He's written a ton of stuff, and he created that Nightman series that used to come on like the WB or something, or WGN, one of those cable channels that don't exist anymore. I kind of liked it, but he was co-creator of that in the late 90s. But the other thing he made directly after this, which I'm sure has nothing to do with Leprechaun, is 2 years later he made that direct-to-video Rumplestiltskin movie. So he apparently had a thing for scary little people and doing weird things and horror films. But I used to have that on DVD, actually. But yeah, I love movies like this. Horror comedy is kind of one of my go-to feel-good type things. I hadn't revisited the Leprechaun series in a while, but I recently got at McKay's the whole box set, which is now in a binder without a box because I don't have any space to put all my movies. I find it interesting. I haven't watched the Leprechaun Reborn reboot, but apparently the Ozzy character comes back in that one from 2018, so I have to go check that one out. I think I've seen all the other ones up to that point, but I dig this film. I have a feeling Jay probably has similar feelings. Jay, what say you?
Well, obviously, we're all kind of the same age group here. We all love this film, right? One of my notes, and it's funny you talked about Rumpelstiltskin. I have the TerraVision 4K they just put out that came with the poster, the little everything. Like,
Nice.
And one of my notes here is like, I would love to had that universe expanded where they cross over.
Oh,
Or
that'd be
hell,
great.
even get Chucky involved. Like
A
just let all the
versus,
little
a
people-
meets.
Yeah, like I thought
Yeah.
that would have been fun, especially since Mark Jones was involved in both. My thing about this movie is the nostalgia is there for me too, because this and Puppet Master was another one that comes to mind, and any Friday the 13th movie, whenever it came on USA, TNT, whatever channel it came on in October, and it was like 60 degrees outside, you had your windows open, you sit down to watch that. That is so fucking cathartic. Like, even thinking back about that, like there's just something about that smell in there when a movie like this comes on, and it has impacted me my entire life. Like, obviously I think my favorite horror genre would be horror comedy, and this did it so well in the 90s. Of course, we didn't appreciate it back then. We were like, we shouldn't be watching this, but we're watching it. It was fun. But I think we were all there because it was so accessible, like you touched on. Like, it was there for us to take in. It was at the video store, it was on television all the time. And that's another thing about this one I remember is part of when I started doing the Sad Spaceman video and thinking about this podcast is I remember going to the video store as a kid. My mom wouldn't let me get the cool looking boxes, like the Puppet Masters, the Wish Masters. Like, you look at them, you're so cool, and they've been engraved in my mind. Leprechaun was always one of those. Like, it's always been engraved. I don't know that I ever got to watch it in my actual house as a kid, but I definitely saw it a couple times at a friend's house. So it's always impacted me. It's just so over the top. The pogo stick, clearly one of the best scenes. One of my favorite is the progression of his wills. He goes from tricycle. He has a wheelchair. He gets a souped up go-kart. I mean, he gets all these fun little toys, and it's just so over the top. It's so ridiculous. But back then it was kind of scary, you know? I remember another movie similar. It was like had Tom Selleck, called Runaway. It's about like robots that kind of go haywire. And that movie, you go back and watch it now, I'm like, this was so over the top. This scared the piss out of me when I was a kid like that. And Leprechaun did too. You watch it now, you're like, this is just insane. Like, but that's what makes it so much fun. This, Killer Clowns, like they go together like peanut butter and jelly. So there's not much more you can say about this one. It's amazing. It's fantastic. If you don't like it, you suck as a person. Like, sorry, you get to. It's just the fact. And you got to think.
Hooray! I don't suck.
How many sequels have there been? Like, I have the Steelbook that has all the movies in it, but I mean, you have that many sequels. I know at some point it's a money grab, but if you stay relevant that long, that says something about you and the character.
And Hornswoggle gets to play a different take on him, and I believe it's Origins.
Yeah. I saw that one, but I can't remember much about it. But anyways,
it's not great.
Yeah.
So didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it. No.
All right, we'll go around and give our rankings, and we'll close up shop. Is it a perfect movie? Yeah, but I think I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I think that's probably what I've always given it. I think that's more than fair. Again, it's the nostalgia for me. Always has been, always will be. Kellen?
Before I give my rating, Ian, what is my most egregious rating in your mind? of the episodes of Overcycle you listen to?
Man.
So many to choose from.
Yeah.
I'm consistently awful.
No, like you've got some that
Creep Show.
I appreciate that you like, but man, I can't pick one like you are consistently critical of them in ways that I don't fully understand. I love watching your reasoning evolve over time. There are some that like you're like, this is just a great movie. It's very well made, and you rank it high, but rationally high, not glowing 5 stars. So I appreciate the amount of thought that you put into them. There are some like Creepshow and some others that have very soft spots for me that I think I might understand if you're looking at it critically that way, but that I just like, where the hell does that come from? That is just very
so basically,
aggressive.
fuck you, Kellen.
No.
I mean, it's hard to know.
But also, yes,
when you take out nostalgia, like how do you even look at that, right? Because we all have nostalgia.
We all have a movie we know sucks, right? We all have one we absolutely know blows, but we still love it. So
right,
yeah, Troll 2 is absolutely that for me. It's the worst or one of the worst movies ever made, but. There was even an episode of Doug I remember seeing as a kid where he was afraid to look at the monster in the movie theater, and when he finally did, he could see the zippers and stuff in the back. That's what Troll 2 is for me. Like, I remember as a kid thinking it was scary, and like now it's just absolutely silly. But Leprechaun is, very special as well for me. So,
is that our first Doug reference on the show?
Ooh, it might be.
Killer Tofu. Yeah,
that's 2.
I still have my Quillman action figure.
A little counter at the bottom. That's 4.
With pork chop that Jay found for me, and I've got Skeeter somewhere. But yeah, loved Doug. Anyway, this is one where I can actually take part in with the rest of the group and say that part of my rating is nostalgia. Like Ian said, you can watch this with a critical eye as an adult. You can see the mistakes. You can see the things, his gloves, the hands they've made bigger. It reminds me of the Goonies. If you ever watch the Goonies, when they go down the slides in the caves, you can see them hit the stalactites that are supposed to be spikes, and you can see them bend because they're foam. It's the same thing with his fingers, but you can pick this movie apart if you want. But why would you want to? It's just such a fun ride. And I'm going to have to agree with Jay on this. I give it a 3.5. That 0.5 is for nostalgia. That 3 is just because this is a fun movie. If you don't enjoy this, I don't know where to start to tell you what you might enjoy, because this is just a fun film. It's an accessible horror film. It's got enough comedy in it to to make it to where it's not terrifying. It's just fun. I don't know how else to say it. It's a fun little horror flick, and I think everybody that loves horror should watch this and should enjoy this movie. So 3.5.
There you go. Drop the mic. All right, Ian.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I would agree. 3.5 seems very fair. It's far from perfect, but it's exactly what we need it to be. It's, comfort food, that sort of thing. I love it.
Tej.
Wow, this might be the rare sweep of a 3.5 because that's what I was coming into this with, and I have not been swayed. I actually think I might like possibly the second one more. As second or third one, I get them all they all just kind of jumble up in my memory. I'd have to revisit them. But for setting up the lore, you got Jennifer Aniston as a decent final girl. Warwick Davis, gotta love him and everything he does. It's not a top tier film. I don't think anybody would say that, even probably the people in it. But it's a fun horror comedy. It's a gateway horror, and nostalgia runs high. So 3.5.
It actually gave me nightmares when I was a kid.
I'm
not ashamed to say it.
I mean, when I was a kid, I thought he looked really creepy and was creepy. So
I still have to jump in the bed and get under the covers when I turn the light off as a 41-year-old man because of this and because of Puppet Master 2. Because I know they're under the bed, but the cover rule applies. Demons can't get you when your feet are under the covers.
Uh-oh. I need to work on that.
Unless you're wanting the demons to get you.
Chucky was always the one that gave me nightmares.
2025 is barely 2 months in, and it is already the worst of all the dumpster fires. So maybe it is time to hang a foot out when you go to bed.
Take the risk. Hey, the grass might be greener, my friend. The grass might be on fire. I don't know. It's worth a shot. All right. That's it for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok, Amazon Music. We have a playlist. And our group over on Facebook. Ian, thank you so much for hanging. I'm glad we finally got to do this. Come back again sometime.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll do. We truly haven't done a Troll 2 episode. We interviewed the guy, but I know that's your baby. It might be scary to get into the ring with Kellen and talk about it. I don't know, but we'll see. All right,
he'll give it another 3.5. I'm sure.
We'll see. Probably. All right, signing off. I'm Jay. With Ian, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
keep it spooky. And don't be stealing gold. Right.
Damn it, TJ.
Spell his thunder.
You want to go again? Keep it spooky.
Drink my...
All right.
Drink. No.
Keep it spooky.
I will say,
drink some Dr. Pepper.
I think my ratings are probably the most hard to track. Like,
I never know what you're going to say.
I would agree. It's definitely turned that way. It started off as like it's going to be rough every time, but then it became like I have no idea where the hell he's going to go on this.
Right.
I know I got the nickname the smiley faced assassin, and now I'm just a wild card. Like nobody knows what I'm gonna. I still think Abigail was the biggest disappointment. The fact that I didn't like that, as far as for the group, I still catch hell for that one.
That is one of the more baffling takes you have.
For it to be disliked to such a great degree, like I didn't love it, but it wasn't. I didn't think it was shit or anything. But
right.
But yeah, I get the critical eye on it, but you got a different rationality. But that honestly adds to the appeal of the show. Like it's a fun podcast to listen to because you each have such a unique perspective on it.
Except me, I'm pretty much down the line. I liked it.
That's what we said. Anytime Jay hates a movie, you know it's bad.
Yeah.
Well, Jay and I, for things that are objectively pretty well considered good, a lot of times we have very similar takes, but every now and then, we have just enough differences in things to where sometimes we're hard one way or another.
I will say this: more egregious than me giving Abigail a 1 is TJ calling Signs shit.
I hate the ending of Signs. I will go to my deathbed saying
That movie is so
We'll send you to your
out
death.
and
We will
so
send you to
built.
your deathbed for that.
swing away, swing away. That's terrible.
What was the one where you amended? Didn't you amend your Abigail review
Mickey's
for
Mouse
Yeah,
another
because of
movie?
Mickey Mousetrap.
Yeah.
Mickey's Mousetrap.
Oh,
That was
I
just-
agree with that one.
That's
I agree with that
subjectively
one.
awful.
That was it was so bad it made me appreciate Abigail for being at least a better movie than that.
There's already another Steamboat Willie ripoff coming out like in the next week or two called I Love Willie. They're just gonna bury that.
Did you?
Have you guys seen the Popeye one yet?
I watched
There's-
the Popeye one.
There's a couple
any good?
Popeye ones.
Yeah, it's fucking great, Ian. Come on. Okay, here's the thing. The Winnie the Pooh movies were good. I liked them. I don't care. This is the same thing. It's the same thing. There's even a hot. Anybody else seen the Winnie the Pooh movies?
I
haven't
started
yet.
the first one.
There's
but
a
I
hot
didn't
tub
finish it.
scene, obviously, and it's British. I think this one's British. There's a hot tub scene. I mean, it's almost the same damn thing, except it's a guy who's got a deformity with giant muscles. I don't even know they're muscles; they're tumors. He's just surrounded with tumors.
It's
And
not a
then-
tumor.
Yeah, it's a movie. You know, you can say I watched it now. I can say I watched it. You know, I don't have to do anything else. I watched the Popeye movie, guys. I did it for us. You know, it's awful. It's dog shit, but I did it.
Of course it was.
But I'm doing that Nashville Film Fest thing. I'm already done. So they give you 18 films every 2 weeks, and I fucking was done on Monday, except three of them need a
Film
password.
for the weekend.
Yeah, no, on Monday actually.
You watched 18
Monday.
films on Monday?
Well, they're short films.
Short
right?
films.
Okay, I was about to say
The
God.
longest
Wow.
was 30 minutes.
Just take Red Bull and cocaine. Is that-
But
is that what you got
there
for-
were three I couldn't watch, and it said I need a password. And I emailed the guy, I haven't heard back, and then I looked it up on my desktop at work, and right underneath the video it says, "Here's your password." I'm like, motherfucker! It was there, but on my tablet it cut it off right there. I never thought to scroll down. Anyways, I'm finished. So they're gonna be like, "This guy's fast. Let's bring him back." And then I'm gonna go, and there's gonna be cool people there. Spider One had a movie last year for it. How crazy is that? The one we just talked to him.
You need to start a Sad Spaceman website just so you can get in on the Rotten Tomatoes thing.
He does. Sad Spaceman Video.
He has a website?
Well, it's not a website, but it's
on
there's
Instagram.
all his
Well, I know
rankings
the
on
Instagram. I follow the Instagram.
I mean, all I do is post a movie and say, "Hey, I gave it this many spacemen." It's not really a lot of effort. In the beginning, I was doing reviews and it just got too exhausting. So I'm like, "Fuck that! Who's reading this shit, anyways?"
I was, and I have been depressed.
I
ever
read a
since.
number of them, but
I do.
Y'all. Well, I'm not doing it anyways. I'm too busy with the podcast and making posts every damn day. I'm actually 2 weeks ahead right now posting. I went nuts.
I saw that you had things scheduled.
Yeah, all I gotta do is do the reels and we're done. So
Nice.
Well,
That's how I
speaking of
used to do when
scheduled,
I
I
used to
have,
run social medias for other people.
I have Lazy Man lasagna scheduled for dinner, so I'm going to go eat
Yeah.
that. If you don't know what that is, instead of making lasagna, use
pizza.
ravioli.
it's pizza.
You layer
Just
it,
roll
but
up
instead of
pizza.
noodles and meat. You use ravioli.
All
So,
right.
ravioli, ricotta, mozzarella sauce, ravioli sauce, mozzarella. Done.
I had Arby's. It was delicious. Roast beef, cheddar, roast beef, cheddar.
I
You
had
look
the
like
roast
you had the
beef.
meats.
I did.
Now you got the meat sweats.
This will come out on St. Patrick's Day.
Really?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Ian. It was blessed. I'm
Absolutely.
glad I
Yeah.
didn't disappoint.
Come back.
Not at all. Not
I'm
at
all
all.
about some Troll 2 action at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Enjoy
you
it.
are.
I'm down. Definitely down.
All
We
right.
should do Troll 1. Troll 2 gets all the stuff, but Troll 1's actually kind of a cool movie.
But aren't they
It's
not
not bad.
related at all?
Not at all. Not
Okay,
even
because
a
I've
bit.
never seen Troll 1. Trolls, I've never seen that.
They
But
have absolutely
also
nothing.
never seen Critters. So
Oh,
Never seen
Critters.
Critters.
no.
Critters and the
Oh.
Leprechaun movies were the only ones my mom would let me rent from the video store. I don't know
That's
what was special
Critters.
about them, but
I love
She
critters.
thought it was Gremlins, and they were cute.
I've only seen one Gremlins, and that's the first one.
You
So-
haven't seen Gremlins 2? Come
No.
on,
Kellen,
Some
man.
are-
Kellen, you had to go. You said
Yeah.
you had to go.
Oh, real quick though, TJ
Make it
mentioned
stop.
Stephen King movies. That reminded me of one of my favorite movies of all time, and I would rate it a really high, like scary high.
Graveyard
Is
Shift.
Needful Things.
Oh, I love
I
Needful
know it's not a
Things.
great movie, but I love it so much.
I
and I've
watched
watched
Needful
that probably
Things
at least 20 times.
At the the movie theater that's run by the horror people in Hermitage. What's that called?
Full Moon. That's a
Simple.
comfort horror film for me. Ed Harris is just fantastic, and I know it's cheesy and stupid and made for TV kind of movie, but I love it.
It didn't make you think of his dancing in Creepshow?
No, it did not. No, it did not.